So, should we buy or sell Nvidia? So first off, read this disclaimer carefully. Then, do your good deed of the day by liking plus subscribing. So, we go to a megatrend that I call computation. And Nvidia is in the semiconductors business, 4.6% away from the 52-week low, minus 62% away from the highs. That is quite the pullback. So here is Nvidia's website. It's in Norwegian, but it says, "Don't miss our presentation on GTC." Yeah, the era of AI and the metaverse. So yeah, a lot of interesting things happening in the semiconductor space. If we go here to the charts, this is the long-term weekly data point picture. If we zoom in, we see that the red 200-week moving average, extremely buyable here in 2019, one of the best times ever to buy Nvidia. And now, many years, well, quite a few years later, oops, that's the wrong color, disaster, absolute disaster. Like that, that's the right color. The red 200-week moving average is now in play. We tested it cleanly and surgically this week. We have seen in the past that this is an extremely viable moving average. Maybe it will work again. If we also look here, you can argue we are at horizontal support. So the technicals here are interesting. Looking at the daily data points, we have the horizontal support, but we are below all the moving averages. Looking at RSI, we are on the weeklies. We are at a level that has formed lows in the past, back in 2012 and also 2012 primarily. To an extent, also here back in 2019. The distance from these PPOs, which is related to the moving averages to the left, we are emerging from a level like if you look at the 50-week PPO. This level formed, a key low back here in 2019, which is also where you had, a 200-week moving average interaction. So there's a confluence of events here. It's interesting looking at accumulation distribution. We do see that there's some bullish divergence. MACD is not sending a buy signal, but a few more days, we would have a buy signal on the MACD on the dailies. RSI here is also interesting. These levels have formed previous lows. You see back here, we got a few bounces. If we go back here, early this year, we got a more significant rally. So let's look at this rally here. It was approximately 22%. That's decent. So in my notes, I write 200 weekly moving average and 50-week PPO support. I give the bulls a 7 on the technicals. Technically speaking, this is very, very interesting. So here is the seasonality for Nvidia. To the right here, we do see that that there usually is weakness into the 18th of October, but then there's a very bullish seasonality. To the left here, over the last 5 years, October is, a bit weak. November is strong. September is weak. If you look at the average loss here of 3%. Over the last 10 years, September, October, November, especially October and November are rather strong months. Big picture, the last 20 years, so from September to October, we usually see some weakness. Then again, the average gain here is decent. November is, very strong. But overall, the seasonality here, it has a bullish lean to it. I do think I give the bulls a 4 here on the seasonality because it's the type of seasonality that, while there are some bearish aspects to the seasonality, it is more favorable to the bulls. So if I was a bear, and wanted to short Nvidia, some of the seasonality data is simply not favorable. It's a bit spooky to be a bear with. There's basically better opportunities if you want to short based on seasonality. Then we look at the fundamentals. SAX has a number 5 strong sell, F value score, but B growth, A momentum. Industry rank is the bottom 18%, semiconductor. Amazing yield of 0.12%. Yeah, not exactly the highest yield, but there is some yield, so you can argue that get yield, but okay. Anyway, market cap is 322 billion US dollars. So definitively not a small cap. Insider activity is more. You do have this bullish move though. This is the president and CEO. On the 6th of September, he did buy 1.2 million shares. Well, bought a bunch of shares here at this price. Probably some, certainly not the stock itself. It could be some kind of derivative or something like that. Okay, anyway, look at the consensus estimates, and we do see that 45 analysts are covering the stock. The average price target is 57% here to the upside. The highest is 142% above us, and the lowest is minus 17% below us. I think I will give the fundamentals a 6 here. There's quite a few interesting developments here for Nvidia. So yeah. Let's look at relative performance. We start with the long-term correlations. 92% with the S&P 500, 95% with the XLK, the broad tech ETF, 93%, so actually a bit less with the SMH, which is the semiconductor ETF. Then minus 8% here with the dollar index. Daily data points, 90% with S&P 500, 91% with XLK, 95% with SMH, then minus 88% with the dollar index. So what happens with the SMH is going to have the biggest effect on, the Nvidia stock. So here is the chart. We do have a pretty substantial downtrend here, a bit of a rounding-ish top pattern. You could also make the case that it's a bit head and shoulder-ish. But yeah, it's a bearish chart. Then again, there's been counter trend rallies during this downtrend. Looking at the daily data points, it's messy. There is some support, but also resistance here. Let's look like MACD did send the buy signal, but now MACD is very close to sending a sell signal. On the dailies, accumulation and distribution is holding up well. RSI is rising from a previous, interesting level, but then again, the bears have been fighting back. Here is Nvidia against the Semiconductor ETF. There's been periods of outperformance and underperformance, and we do have something very, head and shoulderish here, which is bearish. Looking at the RSI though, it gets a bit interesting because the previous time we had this RSI level was back here, and then we did have some temporary outperformance from Nvidia. Back here in early 2021, we entered a very protracted period of Nvidia outperforming the semiconductor ETF. So this is initially interesting, looking at the seasonality. So Nvidia has a tendency to underperform into mid-October, and then it comes back with a vengeance. I give the bulls a 4 here on relative performance. There are some interesting things here for sure. So there is a likelihood that Nvidia could outperform here the SMH. But there's a bit of a tendency that the outperformance comes a bit later into the year, so maybe the timing is not perfect now. We do end up with a 5.3 here in favor of the bulls. The key entry signal stop loss is 200 weekly moving average and 50-week PPO support. So we have some time left, so let's run through some charts. We start here with Texas Instruments. In this case, let me just draw that in. So we have a bit of a inverse-ish head and shoulders pattern. maybe that will turn into something bullish. On the dailies here, we do have some key resistance from the blue 100-day moving average. Taiwan Semiconductors, TSM. Yeah, so on the topic of the red 200-week moving average, you can see here that back in 2015, it was very viable for Taiwan Semiconductors. Currently, it's a bit dangerous for the bulls because you do have something support-ish, but you see here that this week we did close clearly below it. We closed more below it than we did back here in late June. On the daily data points, yeah, it's a bit, yeah, you could make the case that maybe, just maybe, the bulls will be able to use this as an opportunity to form horizontal support. This price level has been viable in the past. So also on the Taiwan Semiconductors, interesting things could happen. Then we have Qualcomm. In this case here, you can see that we had, in past tense, horizontal support around here. But given that we have now closed below some of these key levels, what was support has now become resistance. Yeah. Then we have Broadcom, AVGO. Yeah, the blue 100-week moving average, if you look back here, very tradable, very shortable back here. Then it became buyable. It currently is a battle zone, so up and down, up and down. So recently it actually has not been that tradable because it's such a major contention for both the bulls and the bears. The bulls, they will push us above it. Bears want to push below. So when a moving average becomes like a battleground, and also any other technical levels, I usually like to stay away because the probability of being just chopped into pieces is just too high. So here are the weeklies on ASML holdings. We're sort of like hovering in mid-air here. We don't have any clear technicals to like use as a reference points. Well, we are bouncing from a key level on RSI, so there's that on the dailies. Yeah. Next on the list is KLA Core. Let's actually take Nvidia. Take some more famous names. Intel. So Intel Corporation. So here is Intel. Yeah, been some bearish tendencies here for Intel. We have fallen down here to a previous support level. Let's look at the RSI. RSI is extremely low. The previous time we had this level was back here. It did take some time to form a low, but when the low was formed, an approximate, 200 plus gain was made. Yeah, also back here in 2018. No, 2008 here, 2008, 2009. This weekly RSI level formed the low of the global financial crisis. Looking here at, the green PPO, also formed that key low. Blue PPO, the same thing. So there is the possibility here that a major low could form for Intel. So yeah, definitively have Intel on your radar. Here is AMD, another key player in this space. We have fallen down to what could become horizontal support. Beyond that, you have the red 200-week moving average close by. So there is an opportunity here for the bulls to form a low. Looking at RSI, on the dailies, we are bouncing here from a support level on RSI. So in this case, there's interesting developments here for Nvidia, and when we look at other stocks in the semiconductor space, some of them are potentially forming very major lows, and due to the size of some of these, they could collectively together help form some low. The caveat is, if there is a disappointment, meaning that these lows do not form, then there could be panic. So these are the situations where you could get very big moves. But overall, the data here is definitively bullish in the sense that the bulls have they are the ones who have the major opportunity at the moment. It's really in their hands. It's sort of like the ball is in their court. Um, so they just need to pass it, to some of their best players to score. So I think this is overall interesting. But one of those situations where we are sort of sitting and hoping that there's a bunch of bulls on the sidelines waiting to rush in, and that is the big thing to be determined the coming weeks.